Good afternoon, everybody. I'm back with Poppy and Rye for chapter 15. This chapter is called Rye in the Lodge. When Rye had swum into the lodge, he was too exhausted to offer any resistance to Mr. Kanad, and by the time he did recover his strength, it was too late. The beaver had quickly constructed a cage of maple twigs and hard packed mud, shoveled the exhausted mouse into it with his tail, then sealed the whole thing up. Rye was a prisoner. "Well now, pal," Mr. Kanad said with his usual heartiness, "the name is Castor P. Kanad. Feel free to call me Kaz." "What's your name?" Rye, wretched, gazed mournfully up at the large beaver from behind the bars of his cage. "Rye," he said. "Absolutely delighted to meet you, pal," Mr. Kanad enthused with a big grin. "Where do you live?" "I used to live by the side of the brook." "Moved away, did you?" Rye's eyes filled with angry tears. "You forced us to." "Me? Force you?" "Not me. You could have stayed." "We would have drowned." "Hey, pal, that was your choice. Life isn't fair. No one promised you a rose garden. Take the good with the bad, the sweet with the sour. It all works out in the end." Mr. Kanad offered another toothy smile. "Okay," he went on, "let's cut to the chase. What made you come here?" Rye, glowering, looked up at the enormous beaver. "To get rid of you." "Hey, pal, are you the violent type? Aren't you? You make me nervous," the beaver grinned. "Where do you live now?" "Up by a boulder." "A boulder? That a fact? Exactly where?" "On the ridge, overlooking the pond." Mr. Kanad's heart fluttered. "Not by any chance that boulder right on the ridge that's got a bunch of plants growing around it?" "Yes," Rye answered. "Well, bless my teeth and smooth my tail," Mr. Kanad glowed. "There's a piece of luck. Do you live alone?" "With my whole family." "Your whole family," the beaver said. "Better and better. Family man myself. I love families. This is a good day." Mr. Kanad was thinking furiously. Here is a representative of that last mouse family, a violent type. He breaks in here. Okay, I'll use him to persuade them to move on their own, and it would keep my reputation for progress without pain. "Why is it a good day?" Rye demanded, becoming alarmed. "What are you going to do with my family?" "Hey, pal," Mr. Kanad cried. "Nothing to worry about. I haven't the slightest intention of harming you or your family. You'll be as right as the rain, all tip-top, as the day is long. I'm as straight as a ruler." Rye, staring furiously at the large beaver, said, "How can you say that when you've ruined everything?" "Not everything, pal," Mr. Kanad chortled. "The sun still shines, doesn't it? The moon glows. Admit it, life goes on. We've just changed a few things. Pal, you stop looking at things foolishly. When you see the big picture, you're going to have to agree that Castor P. Kanad tells it like it is. But for now, you're going to have to excuse me while I fetch my family. We need to have a meeting to decide what to do with you." With that, Mr. Kanad plunged off the ledge and swam out of the lodge by way of the entry hole. Alone and depressed, Rye sat within the cage and clutched the twig bars listlessly. He was much angrier at himself than he was at Mr. Kanad. Not only had he failed to do what he set out to do, he was sure his capture would be hard for his parents. As for Poppy, when she learned what he'd done, Rye had little doubt she'd think him a fool. And she'd be right. He was a fool. For a while, Rye tried to break the bars of his cage. He rattled them, he chewed them, but they were made of maple wood, and they were too hard to cut quickly. Then he attempted digging about in the mud that held the twigs to see if that might lead to escape. That, too, proved a failure. Mr. Kanad had packed it down hard. Rye had no choice but to wait and see what the beavers did with him. He did not have long to wait. Members of the Kanad family came into the lodge and examined him. "Isn't he nasty?" one said. "What a little puny fellow he is," another said. "I wonder what he expected to do to us," a third said with a giggle. "He's so weak." Rye, sulking, shrank into the corner of his cage. Mr. Kanad, standing next to the cage, called his company to order. "Once in a blue moon," he began, "beavers find themselves placed to do great things, but if big things are to be done, Castor P. Canad and Company will be the one to do them. Hear, hear, murmured one of the beavers. Way to go, Cass, said another. This is the beavers looking at Rye. All right then, Mr. Canad continued. We're ready to move forward and expand Canad's cute condos into something grander. How about a lake? Wow, fantastic! Too cool! Beaming, Mr. Canad went on. Of course, we'll call it Lake Canad. Here are the plans. He gestured toward the drawing on the bark. To make this lake, we'll need to put in a dam over by this boulder here. Turns out there's a mouse family living under that same boulder. Okay, we could just go ahead and build. But that's not our way, is it? Canad and Company has a reputation for being sensitive. It's important to keep that notion afloat. We need those mice to leave on their own. There was some beating of tails. Okay, how are we going to persuade these mice to move? No problem. Luck comes to those who work hard. Genius is 90% perspiration, 10% inspiration. Good thing I've got a whole 100%. Now we have a visitor, a fine young mouse, Mr. Canad wrote on the cage. Goes by the name of Rye. Rye and his family live right under the boulder we've got the old eye on. Keep going, Kaz, one of the beavers called out, beating his tail on the ground. Okay, I have a chat with these mice. Tell them that my pal here is visiting with us, and Mr. Canad added with a toothy smile, if they want to see him again, they'd better move on. Hey, he said, grinning, you know what they say, walk softly but carry a big stick in your mouth. You said you wouldn't hurt me, Rye cried out. Easy does it, pal. Not saying I am going to hurt you. Remember, you broke in here. You're the violent one. I'll just warn your folks that unless they make amends by moving away, they won't ever see you again. Get it? It's their free choice, and I mean that sincerely. As his family applauded wildly, Mr. Canad grinned. So that is the end of our chapter for today. I'm a little surprised at the turn that this has taken. It seemed like the beavers were forging ahead with their plan to make this lake and make the condos, but they didn't really seem to be, violent toward the mice or a threat to the mice, but other than flooding their house. But now it seems that they're a little bit more devious and evil than we first saw. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. Have a great afternoon.